Okay, let's have a bit of a chat about layers. And I guess what I've got here is I've got a really simple setup here. I've got one single canvas. It's quite large. It's the black background, which you guys probably know I use a lot for teaching. And that's all I've got. Now what I want to do here is I want to introduce a second layer. And that layer right now, as you can see here, is sitting on top of my base, on top of layer 1. Okay, so if I draw something on here, just some squiggly affair, okay, that layer, or this yellow line effectively that I've drawn, is almost like it's sitting on top of a transparent surface, sitting on top of this black layer. So if I move that layer underneath layer 1, you'll see it disappears. It's still there. It's actually still there. But if I have my second layer below my first layer, I can't see it. If I have it above, I can see it. Equally, I can not view it there. I can bring it back. I can not view my first layer, in which case my yellow squiggle simply sits on top of our background. Our background is almost like there's a white bit of paper underneath. Okay, so you've got those things to think about. So a couple of things there that I guess are important. One is layers are what they say. They are additional transparent layers, each of which sits on top of the next. Okay, now they're transparent until you fill them up with something, of course. Secondly, is the order in which they lie on top of one another is relevant. Okay, that's an important thing, because it may well be that you think you're drawing on. You may well think that you're going to see one thing and you don't see it. So, for example, if I have this layer underneath, and if I have this layer here underneath my main layer and it's hidden, I might be in the middle of a teaching episode, and because it's underneath the black canvas there, I might go to reveal it and think, well, where is it? And of course the answer is it's under there. The next point I would make is that layers can also be images. So if I just choose, I used this image recently, there's an image which I can move around. This image right now, when I do this, it's going to form here, as you see, as a layer. Okay, so this becomes a layer, and it stays as a layer until you merge it with all, or you merge it with the one below. So let's merge everything together. So we've now got on one single layer this image, which is actually sitting as part of this black canvas here. That is one and the same layer. Okay, they are not separate. Now I can undo them and I can make them separate again, and I can move this around again. It's absolutely fine. Or I can keep the black canvas and I can hide it. But if it's all one, if I hide it, I hide the whole thing. Okay, so you might want to be thinking about that. Again, some of you will have seen that if I just go back to having these all separate for a second, some of you may have seen already that one of the things you can do is you can put an image over, a layer over the top of an image, and you can get into the habit of sketching these things. Okay, you can basically trace these, and mine's going to be super ugly here because I'm rushing it, but you can make some nice, every time I do it, you can make some nice images based on tracing over the top of things if you want to, So, I can go across here and trace my waterline. I can go across here and I can trace my kind of sediment line like this. And if I get rid of that one, I've got the basic illustration of what it was there, albeit super ugly. So those are some nice things for you to be aware of. Other things I would say is that you can rename your layers. I want to call this a trace, for example, so you know what they are in order. You can also delete your layer, so I can get rid of that permanently. I'm going to do it because it's super ugly. I can get rid of this one permanently. And you've got some nice here. You've got some nice controls here, which you might find super useful to use. Rename, duplicate, clear, lock layers. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with these. This I don't really use. This drop down, I don't even know what that stuff is, so I'm going to keep it on normal. Feel free to explore it. Now, one thing I did want to mention before I finish here is I do make a particular note of what my background color is. I always personally set my background color to black, and the reason I do that is because if I let's just make some squiggle. If I decide to rub that squiggle out and I've got my eraser, I want the color underneath to be black. And obviously, if I set that to, I don't know, to turquoise or to green, my background color underneath are those colors. So I want my background color to be black, so if I rub anything out, I have that background working that way for me. Okay, so for me that's important. But basically this is how layers work, and it's a really useful thing for you to get to grips with early about the possibilities that layers provide. I mean, I guess in many ways, if you think about some kind of PowerPoint slide that you might use, for example, layers are a way of achieving that, because effectively within this rectangle, I can have a layer. Let me just, in fact, look, maybe I've got maybe the first thing I want to do is I want to add some text to my slide. The next thing I want to do is I want an image to appear in my slide. Okay, maybe the next thing I want to happen is some shapes to appear in my slide. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Bear with me a second, put another layer in here. Maybe I want something else to appear in my slide. So the point would be that what I can do is I've got a blank slide. I introduce the first idea, a bit of text, I introduce the second idea, a bit of an image, I introduce the third idea, some shapes. Okay. Now, I'm not a massive fan of PowerPoint slides and things like that, but if you want to get to a point where you believe pre-made resources, materials, ideas, drawings, this sort of thing are available to you to reveal and disappear, then you can, of course, do it in this way. I mean, if you're just going to, I think there's quite specific uses for that. If you're just going to make a bunch of PowerPoint slides, you might as well use PowerPoint. But obviously you don't get, there's just going to be certain circumstances where you might feel that's relevant. Anyway, I'll leave you with that.